Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you. Yujan did not let me have slides, so it's just you guys and me and my notes today. My name's Yifan Zhang. I'm a two-time founder and CEO. My first startup was one of the top mobile fitness apps in the first wave of iPhone apps. I built that startup in San Francisco. My second startup was an affordable housing startup called Loftium that raised over $130 million before it was acquired by local real estate company Fly Homes. I built that startup here in Seattle. I'm now the co-managing director of the AI2 Incubator based here. We invest primarily in Seattle AI startups, but we do have founders from all over North America. And I also launched AI House, which is a physical space right here on the waterfront that's dedicated towards AI founders and AI practitioners. I'm here to talk about everyone's favorite topic, which is SF versus Seattle, especially during the AI era. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Being an SF as a founder is pretty awesome. So why are we all still here then at the Seattle Startup Summit? I have a theory, which is that part of what makes SF so great for founders also makes it more likely to overlook or be actively detrimental for a different type of founder and startup, one that may be category defining in the AI era. So before we get there, I think it's really important to understand what makes SF so great for founders, especially if you've never built a company there. For me, it was really about the sheer density of the incredibly talented people who are all focused on one thing, which is how to be the best possible founder and build the best possible company. So in that type of ecosystem, you are going to be able to learn best practices faster and earlier than any other place in the world. You are surrounded by optimistic founder types that don't make you feel crazy for wanting to start a company. You're able to hire from a talent pool that actually would rather work for a startup than a big tech company. And this is especially relevant today. You will have access to cutting-edge technology. So the proximity to companies like OpenAI, Perplexity, Anthropic, Cursor, et cetera, means that every happy hour, dinner conversation, right, grocery run, you're gonna run into people who are building this cutting-edge technology, and you're gonna be talking about how that technology is being built, your startup best practices. So in that type of ecosystem, it's pretty easy, right, for you to have an advantage. I had this experience personally. My first startup, the mobile fitness app, Gympact, I moved from Boston to San Francisco, and within a year of launch, we became profitable. I credit a lot of that rapid growth to being in San Francisco. I learned things about how to build a great app user experience, viral growth mechanisms. I had incredible mentors like Keith Raboy from Khosla helping me really think through the trade-offs between being early on Facebook mobile installs versus API partnerships with fitness trackers. It was the type of ecosystem that as a 23-year-old founder at the time, I could really absorb all of that knowledge, deploy it faster than anyone else, and really have an advantage. That was back in 2012, when SF was the epicenter of the mobile consumer revolution. Today, SF is very much, we have to admit it, the epicenter of the AI revolution. And I have no doubt that the founders based in SF are getting those same exact advantages. But there are some downsides to being in SF. VCs will want you to grow at all costs, which is great if you're Anthropic and you can actually go from 0 to $1 billion in 2 years, right? But every other startup then gets compared against that type of startup. You might be influenced to raise mega rounds when that's actually pouring jet fuel in a plane when you're just learning how to fly. You may be influenced to pivot away from startup ideas that are good and are just a couple of tweaks away from being great, or to pivot away from great startup ideas that just cannot grow at the same rate because of structural or industry constraints. In SF, you're very much part of an echo chamber. Everyone has the same exact experience. It's technologies, it's startups. And that means that you're gonna get a lot of the same feedback over and over again, whether or not it is relevant to your company. Some of those people giving you the feedback know exactly why that feedback is important, but often you're gonna hear that feedback from people who don't really know the difference and are just indiscriminately giving that feedback to you because they heard it secondhand at a dinner conversation. To put it into perspective, here are a couple of my real examples from personal experience. My first company, Gympact, was a financial incentives app. So we charge you for not exercising, and they use that to pay people who did exercise. This actually created a pretty powerful financial incentive that motivated over 95% of our customers to hit their healthy goals every single week. When we moved to San Francisco, the advice that we got over and over again from VCs was, why don't you remove the paywall? That's going to remove friction from your onboarding, and you're going to get more customers. But these VCs missed the whole point of our app, which is that the financial incentive was the value add. It was the incentive system, and it was also our business model. So thankfully, we did not listen to that advice, and we went from 0 to profitable in a year. We were the viral app of 2012, and we did trend on Twitter for 2 minutes during launch. My other company, Loftium, I built the team here in Seattle, but my investors were in San Francisco. This was a housing affordability startup, so I did have to go down to SF to raise money. The first question that I got from VCs was, is housing affordability and down payments even a problem for people? After I convinced VCs that yes, indeed, there are a lot of Americans that actually do struggle with coming up with a down payment, the second question was, well, with Loftium, you're asking your renters to host guests in a part of the home to save up that down payment and own a home. Isn't that too much work? Isn't that too much friction? Right? Why not just take home equity like all the other startups here in San Francisco? It took us going from 200K in revenue to over 30 million in revenue in 1 year to really assuage those concerns. My point of these examples is this type of generic, indiscriminate feedback really smooths down some of the jagged conviction of your unique ideas. Right? Every coffee chat in SF could be another grain of sand that wears off the edges of your unique startup and idea until it looks like everyone else. This brings me to my main theory, which I call the butter startup versus the sand in the gears startup. If you're building a butter startup, meaning a startup that succeeds solely based on pure speed of execution, a extremely smooth customer experience, removing all friction for your users, please do go to San Francisco. Honestly, you're going to get better advice there, you're going to fit in, and I do believe that in that category, the best startups are going to come from San Francisco. But if your startup has some sand in the gears, meaning real-world complexity, hardware, human relationships, regulatory edges, that friction will be treated as a flaw in San Francisco, when actually it might be a feature for you. That jaggedness could make your idea unique. The sand in the gears might give you some defensibility, a moat against the onslaught of competitors that are exactly the same. This is especially true in the AI era when building has become so cheap. The people, the founders, willing to grind it out through these sand in the gears startups versus pivoting away from the things that are hard will end up winning in these categories. Let me give you a specific example from the AI2 portfolio. We have a startup called Friday Harbor, unsurprisingly based here in Seattle, that's using AI to tackle mortgage underwriting. They were started in late 2023, so this was a pretty hard technical problem back in the day, right? You're matching a pile of borrower documentation against a pile of lender guideline documentation and trying to see who qualifies for a mortgage. In late 2023, you were dealing with low context windows, no agentic systems, right? No reasoning models. So not a low-hanging fruit problem to go after when a lot of people were working on problems like content generation, image generation, right? Video generation. It's also a hard problem when it comes to the customers. You're dealing with a not tech-savvy customer audience, right? Mortgage loan officers, right? Mortgage originators. They're AI skeptical. They are, they don't trust people that don't come from the industry and from a mortgage background. So thankfully, the CEO of Friday Harbor, Theo Ellis, did come from a mortgage background, and he was, more importantly, willing to grind it through all the tough technical problems and really stay focused on the end-to-end outcome for the customer, right? Delivering that mortgage underwriting. Enough so that Friday Harbor benefited from all the advances of AI technology and now is one of the leaders in this space when it comes to mortgage AI. and that's a massive TAM. Friday Harbor is the type of company that seems inevitable in hindsight, but from the start, it was really not obvious it would even work. So the ability to work through some of these hard technical problems is, in my opinion, what makes Seattle unique. Above cities like New York, LA, Austin, Miami, we have a serious engineering culture here that's head and shoulders above every other city and goes toe-to-toe with San Francisco. This is critical in the AI era especially. Despite how powerful Claude Code and Codex has become, there are still gaps that require human thinking to build actually difficult AI native agentic systems. It's very tempting to hide those gaps with smoke and mirrors prototypes that don't work in production, or to fill those gaps with humans that don't scale. Seattle founders, in my experience, are much less embarrassed to say that they have 0 paying customers versus launch a product that doesn't work. And that's a flaw in some cases, but it's definitely a feature if you're working in an industry that tackles hard problems where the tech absolutely has to work. At AI2 Incubator, our goal when we invest is to build the best technical product in every category that we enter. And we can do that because of this serious engineering culture here in Seattle. So I've told you how SF is not perfect, neither is Seattle. If you are an AI founder building here in Seattle, here are a few tips of what to avoid. The top thing is listening to the wrong people's feedback. For better or worse, Seattle is still a big tech town, right? You're much more likely to run into people who have a lot of big tech experience versus people who have actually been a founder or know the early stage. First, those people might give you feedback that it's crazy to start a company. From an expected value perspective, that is probably true, but it's also very unhelpful for someone who's actually trying to start a company. The second thing is a lot of the mentalities, the cultures, right, best practices that make people successful at big tech companies may not apply to an early stage startup, right? So if you listen to that advice, you may end up hiring the wrong people too early, people who are managers or strategists versus hands-on builders. You may over-engineer your solution and for scalability too early, when actually you should be figuring out product market fit and working on speed of iteration, speed of execution. So make sure that if you're building here, you're surrounding yourself with other founders and also with people that can really give you valuable advice versus irrelevant advice. Also, I think historically in Seattle, there's been a relatively narrow image of who is a founder, who gets to be a founder here. Right? Namely, if you didn't have a senior Amazon, Microsoft exec background, you weren't seen to be fit to be a founder. That type of profile does fit one type of company very well. If you're building a B2B SaaS enterprise company that's selling back to those Microsoft and Amazon execs, absolutely, that background works really well. But for every other type of startup, that background is pretty much irrelevant, right? So don't let it get to you. If you don't come from that background, pay attention to the things that you uniquely bring to the table and build a company around that. Because to me, the beauty of being a founder is that you don't need anyone's permission, anyone's approval to be a founder. You are not judged by your past titles, how many people you had under management, what school you went to. You're judged solely by the quality of your idea, your conviction in it, right? Your ability to execute and deliver a product for your end customer. That's it. It's super empowering, but it's also really, really difficult. So I want to take a moment and just say hats off to all the founders in the room. I see many of you. I know how hard it is, right? All the risks that you're taking, all the sacrifices you make, all the work that you put into it. So thank you for the work that you're doing and for being here. In closing, I want to say geography does impact your idea, your chances of success, right? So choose it as carefully and wisely as you choose your startup idea and industry. And maybe, just maybe, you can build the next iconic company that defines the AI era, one that's non-obvious from the get-go and inevitable in hindsight. Thank you so much. Do you want me to take questions? I'm happy to. Yeah. Any questions?
2 questions. Okay. Oh man, all the way across over there.
Knowing what you know.
Okay, the question is, knowing what I know now, what company would I start today in the AI era, right? So I, thankfully, as part of my job, I get to think about this constantly. So AI2 Incubator is the type of model where every managing partner gets to incubate 5 companies per year. So I think it's very hard right now in the AI era to put all your eggs in one basket unless you have a ton of conviction. So I actually really like this portfolio approach that I get to take right now. I have been a B2C founder 2 times. I've been watching for when the B2C curves kind of cross for me to be able to build B2C AI startups. And I do think that right now is that type of moment, right? So the curves that I watch are, one is around consumer experience, because consumers have the highest expectation of any customer that you'll ever have, right? The other curve is cost, right? Cost of tokens, cost of models, because consumers are also the cheapest customers that you'll ever have. Like, they will pay nothing and demand the most out of you. And I think that the curves have finally crossed, that there's some really interesting consumer experiences that are being built. So I'm investing in some of them. Some of them are disrupting marketplaces, using voice AI, right? Other ones are looking at the OpenClaw kind of libraries and seeing what you can do with that.
One more question. Okay, gotcha.
Hi. So when you were raising money for your startup, for RACI, did you, like when you're talking to the VCs and face some questions from them, how did you navigate and like kind of navigate your edge and strengths of your startup and balance that fine line to not only just to I guess to solve the questions for them, and like to also keep the value of your startup. I'm just wondering, like, what methodology did you use to convince the VCs, but also keep the core value of the startup?
Oh, that's such a great question. And I also coach founders on this every day. Well, I think first I made a mistake with my first startup. I took money from Khosla and Max Levchin, talked with Chamath, talked with a bunch of crazy investors in SF who convinced me to actually pivot away from my profitable consumer app company into this health insurance product that really, I had no business running as a 23-year-old and was probably a different company. So I had that personal experience of making that mistake, which really, I think, informed my second company and also the way that I think about fundraising today. For me, I think if you're going to be a startup CEO, part of your job is to raise funding, right? But I actually think of fundraising as a fundamentally different part of your job than operating your company. And the way that I navigate it is when I'm operating the company, I'm in pure operator mode, right? And that means staying really close to the details, knowing everything about execution. There's no room for fudging or optimism, right? That's only going to get you in trouble. But then I actually separate out this other part of myself that's fundraising Yifan. And I actually told my team, right, at Loftium, I was like, okay, I'm going into fundraising mode. I actually don't want to know any of the operating details while I'm fundraising, unless it's something good, then tell me. But I don't want to hear about the bad things right now. I'm going to go into this strategic world where investors don't care about all the details of your operations, right? They only care about the future, your vision, where things are going, the tailwinds, how the market comes together. So you just have to put yourself in that type of mindset. It doesn't mean that you need to sacrifice anything around the operations, but there's just a whole swath of your business that the VCs really are not going to make their decision based on, right? So you don't talk about that stuff, and then the part of your brain, right, needs to be really elevated to a different strategic level, and kind of that's the way that I deal with it. And I coach a lot of technical, right, very operational founders. They have to make space for fundraising and treat it with importance and really treat it as a job. Are we done?
Yeah, we can take one.
Okay. last question.
So a lot of health startups are going after clinical workflows and B2B. I'm building something that's consumer-facing AI that helps people make better food decisions in real time at a grocery store. So from what you see at AI2, is consumer health AI underinvested right now? Or is there a reason the market is tilting enterprise?
Sorry, is there a reason the market is what?
Tilting enterprise.
Oh, tilting enterprise, got it. Yeah, so I think there's definitely reason. I do think that consumer AI has a lot less investment than enterprise AI. I don't know, underinvested is an interesting way to put it, right? You kind of have to compare the value. And I do think in the last couple of years, honestly, the low-hanging fruit and also what the technology was capable of was probably better applied to enterprise or to models that, you know, actually did require some human in the loop, right? Like the technology just wasn't great enough to deliver this type of like end-to-end, really great outcome at a cheap enough price until recently, in my opinion. So I don't think that VCs are irrational. I think the money went to enterprise because that was the right fit in the past. I think today, there's still a ton of enterprise applications that are underexplored. I do think there is now a moment for consumer, and I do think that from this year onward, you're going to start seeing a lot of interesting applications of consumer AI that hopefully look very different than anything that was possible before. So, kudos to you. I think it's fantastic that you're building in B2C. By the way, I started a B2C meetup at AI House for all the Seattle B2C founders who feel alone, like we all think we're alone, but actually there's a ton of us. So definitely check that out. But B2C, I do think is uniquely difficult, right? Or it's different from B2B. So you have a different set of like skills, right? Challenges, growth is very different than B2B. So you want to surround yourself with people who know B2C specifically. Awesome, great. Thank you so much.